here we are. What's up guys, it's me, Jago, or my real name is Preston. Today I wanted to get into talking about not just how I learn Japanese, but more so my theories, opinions, and methods on how to learn Japanese and how to implement them. More specifically, this video is going to be focused more on accent and intonation and how to more effectively learn Japanese for a better quality accent and intonation. And the main reason for that is that's just a little bit more what I'm known for, but for anyone that's new here, この名前はプレストンって言います。この動画がですね、だいたいこのチャンネルが始めた時からずっとコメント欄とかからこういう僕がどうやって日本語を学んできたかを説明する動画がすごいお願いしてきたんですけど、で僕もずっとやりたかったですけど、大体ですねこのビデオエッセイみたいのやるの初めてだし、できるだけ完璧にしたくてすごい時間かかってきたんですけど、みんなよく待ってくれて本当に助かりました。ということで I think it's time to drop some ball knowledge on you guys. I guess a good place to start would probably just be the timeline of how I learned Japanese, and then we can get into more of the hows, the what's good, the what's bad, and what gives you the best chances of having a really good accent and intonation. So to kind of just speed run this, for the first 6 months of my learning, I focused mainly on grammar and vocab, but to be honest, mainly just grammar. And this wasn't necessarily kind of any conscious choice, but more so it was just a lot more of what I was interested in, and definitely got a lot of the busy work done. I think in 6 months, to be completely honest, I learned essentially all of the relevant grammar in the Japanese language. For anyone who thinks that's impossible for whatever reason, you're wrong. It's possible. I did it. But after my first 6 months, I kind of hit like a Japanese learning midlife crisis where I felt like I put so much time into it, but I wasn't really seeing much results, nor was I really being able to understand much active conversation, whether that be from just watching a show or anime or whatever have you. You know what I mean? Just spoken Japanese, my mind was not understanding it that much. And which is, to be fair, a very normal thing to experience at this stage. But nonetheless, I really just wanted to be able to understand the spoken language more than anything. So I took a big gear shift. Well, since I've already finished essentially all of the grammar of the Japanese language in those first 6 months, I then dedicated the next 6 months to just purely input. So lots of podcasts, lots of shows, just trying my best to absorb the Japanese language every single day, and in the process just taking note of any words that popped up often that I didn't know and searching them up, putting them in my notebook, and memorize them every single day. So about a year total in is where I finally decided that I'd become able to understand Japanese enough to the point where I wanted to start outputting. So from then on, I started using apps like HelloTalk just to kind of connect with people, because in all honesty, there isn't much Japanese people where I live. So I made a good few friends there and chatted with them in Japanese to the best of my ability. And around a year and a half in, for the first time in my life, I held my first full conversation in Japanese for around like 6 hours straight. I think at that time, I finally became confident saying to other people that yes, I could speak Japanese, and a few more months after that, I could confidently say that I was around conversationally fluent, and what I mean by that is definitely not fluent like I am right now, but able to talk, able to make myself understood, able to hold conversations, express myself in Japanese, and understand other people when they're speaking to me in Japanese. A few more months and around the 2nd year mark, I started going to college. From there, I started making a lot of Japanese friends, and essentially every week I was using the language. We would speak Japanese, we'd hang out in Japanese. Around this time is kind of when I started getting the "are you half Japanese" allegations, and admittedly, while they felt good in the moment, around this time specifically, I think they were a little bit misleading just because my accent was so good that the first few lines of Japanese that I spoke would essentially trick them into thinking that I was half, but in reality, as the conversation went on, I feel like there were a lot more visible cracks in my Japanese that could be seen, like for example, just with, I don't know, stuttering and kind of like talking in circles, or, you know, messing up grammar here and there, just generic, not completely fluent yet, you know, type of stuff. But my accent was really good, so that helped a lot. From then on out, I didn't really do much input practice anymore because hanging out with my friends in Japanese essentially became my input and output practice at the same time, so I didn't really feel much of a need to lock myself in my room and watch whatever in Japanese for whatever amount of time, because I was just doing it every single day. And admittedly, I was getting pretty busy with college. So essentially at this point, I've dropped, so to say, studying Japanese just in the normal sense of studying it. And I more so just kept making steady progress by speaking the language a lot and hanging out with my friends in Japanese. So that went on, and around the 3-year mark, I would say is where I hit the level of Japanese that I'm kind of at right now. Obviously in total, my Japanese learning starting from COVID and till now would be like 6 years or so. But from year 3 and on, to be honest, I haven't really done anything in terms of just actively learning. I more so have just been using the language and let it grow and keep itself alive. Even though I have a lot of Japanese friends, I don't live in Japan or anything, so obviously just living in America, English is always just fresh in my mind and having to do everything every single day because I have to. But I would say I was definitely using Japanese enough to the point where it was definitely keeping itself alive and progressing just by using it. So till now, 2-3 or so more years have passed, making the grand total from when I started learning Japanese back in COVID 2020 to now to be around 6 years. Now, if you've been paying attention, you might actually realize that there's something missing in that whole timeline that I just explained up till now. I'll give you a few seconds to guess what it is. Never mind, I won't. It is reading. Now, throughout this timeline, I essentially never studied how to read. And I know that might seem like an exaggeration, but to be honest, it's more closer to the truth than you might think. I essentially never really made any conscious effort to learn how to read, not because I wanted to do it that way, but basically just because I never really cared for it, to be honest with you. When I was little, my parents forced me to read like 2 hours of a book every single day, and ever since then, I just hated reading, to be completely honest. Not that there's any problem with liking reading, but because of that and other things, it's just really not for me. So what I mean by that is I didn't learn hiragana or katakana till around 2 years in when I reached basic fluency. Now, I'm definitely not saying that this is what you should do too, but I can explain how this actually helped me to get a really good accent and intonation. Now, this is where we're going to get into a lot of the important stuff I want to talk about, so pay attention. So how does this relate to accent and intonation? And get ready for some controversial takes. First, we have to think, how do kids learn Japanese? And I don't think you have to think about it for very long. They learn phonetically. They learn through lots and lots of input and learn how to understand and eventually how to speak almost entirely out of just what they hear. Now, obviously, there are a few caveats to this. First of all, our minds as adults or teenagers are not as malleable as that of an infant, and children, when they first start speaking a language, obviously don't speak fluently off the bat. But what is true is that they more or less become fluent in speaking first and then learn reading in school, basically the exact same way we do in English. Now, when you apply that to us in our adult form, essentially what that means is we'll be hyper-optimized to understand a language, in this case Japanese, by its phonetics and not its reading. Meaning that in our mind, the most prevalent version of the language is how it sounds, not how it's written or spelled. Now, relatively, this alone leads to a very deep and unconscious level of understanding in Japanese's phonetics and also its pitch accent as well, to the point where you'll dead know if someone's pitch accent or pronunciation is wrong just by hearing it. And by extension, you'll know when yours is wrong or not when you speak as well. Now, admittedly, this might not be entirely new news, as, well, first of all, if you think about it, it makes a lot of sense. And two, one of the most popular and, in my opinion too, one of the best guides for how to learn Japanese, made by Trenton, actually kind of goes into this a little bit as well, where he kind of claims something along the lines of,
if your goal is to sound as close to a native speaker as possible, it's probably worth it to be extreme and to become fluent entirely through the spoken language before even learning to read. On the other hand, if you don't really care about having a foreign accent at all and you just want to get competent as fast as possible, then honestly, you can just ignore this section entirely and just read a ton from the beginning.
And I guess I'm kind of just one of the first results of that who has a YouTube channel to talk about it. Now, I'm not claiming that in order to reach a similar level of pitch accent and pronunciation, you need to 100% ignore reading. But what I am trying to say is that a dramatic shift away from read, read, read to speak, 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 and listen, listen, listen will help you with your pitch accent and pronunciation a lot. So now we're going to go even more into ways that you can optimize your language learning for accent and pitch accent. And again, there's also going to be a few controversial takes in here, so I guess buckle down. So the first one, and I guess the big one that I think all the editors are going to come after my head for, is no subtitle supremacy. One of the most talked about bits of advice for learning Japanese, specifically with input learning, is using Japanese subtitles to essentially do two things at once, where you can practice listening with your ears while also reading with your eyes, and making it easier for you to learn vocab along the way, since you can just see the kanji written right there, search it up, and more efficiently learn words that way. But the truth is that even when you have Japanese subtitles, you will still unconsciously read what's written on the screen in front of you, and you're going to be losing out on a lot of understanding of the phonetics of that language. So on the contrary, if you switch to 0 subtitles, period, so no Japanese subtitles and definitely no English subtitles, you're essentially forcing your brain to make sense out of every single bit of noise that it's hearing, which in this case is the Japanese language, by itself, with no assistance from anything being read on the screen at all, which in that sense hyper-optimizes your understanding of the phonetics of the language while also getting your brain and ears used to how the language sounds and how to understand it. Now, for anyone that doesn't believe me, I challenge everyone that's watching this video that's in the middle of their input learning to go watch whatever you're watching in Japanese and take all the subtitles off and tell me that you can understand the exact same amount that you are understanding with the subtitles on. Now, if the answer is that you couldn't understand as much, I challenge you from now on to take the subtitles off and improve your own listening while also improving your future speaking. And if the answer is that you can understand the same amount, then you're probably lying. And the reason for that is just, well, things that are written in front of your eyes are a lot clearer to understand when you could read them compared to things being spoken, just because people mumble, people talk fast, people slur their speech. That's just how movies and speech works. Even in the case of English, I'm pretty sure if you watch something with the English subtitles on, you're going to be able to clearly understand a lot more of each word someone's saying compared to if the subtitles weren't there. Now, obviously, this is something that comes with its cons, which would be, one, you lose out on a lot of reading practice, and two, you lose out on a good bit of vocab practice as well, because when the word isn't written out in front of you, you're gonna have a little bit more trouble finding the word if you misheard it or something. And even if you do find the word, there could be words with the exact same spelling and pronunciation that are just different kanji, which have different meanings, which again, if you don't have the subtitles on, you don't know the kanji, so you're kind of stuck in limbo unless you turn them on for a second and figure it out, or just move on. But again, this is something that comes with its cons, so be prepared if you want to go this way. Now, another tip that again is kind of controversial, not as controversial as the last one probably, but definitely still pretty controversial, is that using real Japanese for input is going to get you a lot better of an accent than using anime Japanese for input. And essentially what I mean by that is you should be listening to a lot more real life, live action, or I guess YouTube, whatever Japanese, instead of anime for your input. Now, admittedly, anime is not bad at all as a way for inputting, especially at your beginning stage, because, well, one, and I know a lot of people don't talk about this, but the voice actors in anime, their job is to be able to speak clearly into a microphone. So their speech is a lot clearer to understand compared to real life Japanese, where people mumble a lot more, or sometimes talk a little bit faster, or slam words together, just do a whole bunch of speech acrobatics to confuse you. So again, when you are in the kind of more beginning stages to, I guess, middle stages of your input, anime is completely fine. But what is important is that you do eventually switch to real life Japanese for your input, or else later on your accent and your pitch accent at best probably won't be as good, and at worst it'll sound like an anime character, and to be honest, you really just don't want to sound like an anime character ever. And this just kind of ties into the fact that whatever speech you hear the most is eventually going to be how you sound when you start speaking. Again, using babies, or I guess children as an analogy, we tend to tell each other not to swear around kids, because if you swear around kids and they hear you swearing a lot, they're eventually going to start saying those swear words too, just because they're in their younger stages of the language. And in that sense, we are the same. Whatever form of the language that we listen to the most is eventually going to be how we sound when we start speaking, and that's just the truth. So in that sense, you can hyper optimize that by making the language that you hear real spoken Japanese instead of anime Japanese. Now, obviously this can be achieved by just simply replacing anime as an input with just dramas or reality shows, YouTube, even like things like TikTok and Instagram, just you name it. As long as you have a healthy stream, and I guess majority stream, of real life Japanese over your anime Japanese, when you start speaking, your accent is going to be a lot better and your pitch accent is going to be a lot better. Now, finally, we're going to get into something that I don't think is very controversial as a way of helping your pitch accent, but that is shadowing. Now, I think the generic way of shadowing that everyone learns is that whenever you're watching something in Japanese and they say a line of dialogue, you just repeat that dialogue yourself, which obviously helps and is very productive with helping your accent and your pitch accent. But there's a step further to that, which is kind of just embracing your inner Japanese learning nerd and just start mumbling to yourself in Japanese whenever, wherever. As long as people aren't seeing you, or even if people are seeing you, who cares? Maybe just have one AirPod in to pretend that you're in a phone conversation or whatever. Kind of talk to yourself, that's what I'm saying. Oftentimes when you're really gung-ho about learning a language, like I was, and I'm pretty sure you guys are too, you're gonna have instances where Japanese sentences just kind of randomly pop up in your head. But what's important is that instead of just letting it pop up and disappear, you actually just kind of like say it or mumble it or whatever. Maybe not so much mumbling, but more so whispering. Now imagine I'm just like walking out outside, whatever, just going about my day, and like I randomly just remember the phrase like, that's me saying it with full voice. But if that came up my mind and I'm going about my day, and what I would do, and I actually still do, is I would just kind of like whisper it to myself, like that. And if you kind of do that a lot, your brain and your mouth and your face are going to get a lot more used to speaking the language and also speaking the language correctly. But admittedly, this kind of does come in line with a few of my other points before, because in order for this to be productive, you need to have the correct deep phonetic understanding of how the Japanese language is supposed to sound in both pitch accent and just normal accent. Or else what'll happen is you'll be shadowing a phrase to yourself in the wrong pitch accent and or accent, which if you do over and over again, kind of isn't really that productive for you in my opinion. Now, a final tip that a lot of people talk about, but I kind of just want to stress the importance of, is definitely putting a lot of effort into thinking in Japanese while speaking in Japanese. Now, I know that's a little bit difficult to describe how to do because it's an inner cognitive function, where else everything else is kind of like a you do this and you get that kind of situation. But definitely, it's worth putting an effort into. If you do not think in Japanese, or at least attempt to think in Japanese while speaking Japanese, you are going to have a very hard time speaking, for one thing, getting good at speaking for another thing, and 3, having a good accent when speaking. And that's obviously just because if you're thinking in English and you're translating every single word from English and every single piece of grammar from English into Japanese while speaking Japanese, it's really slow, it's really inefficient, and if you're thinking in English, your accent is going to sound like you're speaking English. So again, I know while it's a little bit difficult to explain how to do, I think a good few ways to at least get the ball rolling is to use Japanese filler words. So instead of saying like in English, say nanka cool, like stuff like that. Like you just don't say If you say while speaking Japanese, I know for a fact that you're not thinking Japanese, or at least not trying to think in Japanese, and that's going to hurt you a lot in the long run. Finally, this isn't really a tip, but this is something I kind of want to touch on, and that is pitch accent training. And what I mean by that more specifically is the videos out there by a lot of popular creators like Dogen and stuff, who actually scientifically break down the Japanese pitch accent and explain it to you that way. Now, obviously, I think these videos are good, and it's really impressive how they're able to break everything down so neatly, but I think these serve more so as a way to fix already broken pitch accent than a way to learn good pitch accent. And what I mean by that is, if you do everything else in this video, not even everything, if you do maybe half of the things that I said in this video consistently, your pitch accent and your normal accent will probably be good enough to the point where you probably don't need to use those videos to fix your pitch accent. And yes, for everyone asking, I never use those videos. I actually never even studied pitch accent, or even really just accent in general. My current pitch accent and my current accent are all just a result of how I learned the language. And even though it was unintentional, how I learned it optimally to have a really good accent and a really good pitch accent. Now, I say unintentional as if I never cared about accent at all, and that's obviously not true. Like, from the beginning of my Japanese learning, I knew that I really wanted to have a good accent, but I never actually studied what made a good Japanese accent. I just learned in the optimal ways that I listed to my current accent and pitch accent. And also, this is kind of just my opinion, but I think that the correct pitch accents that a lot of the times they're explaining kind of end up being a little bit too perfect. And what I mean by that is, Japanese people, especially Japanese people who aren't from Tokyo, a lot of the times don't sound that perfect with their pitch accent. It's not just word by word pitch accent, it's the overall rhythm of the sentence. So when you kind of focus too hard on just this pitch accent for this word and that pitch accent for that word, you kind of treat it like Chinese, where it's a bit of a tonal language, and that's just not the case. I guess what I'm trying to say is that when I speak Japanese, a lot of the time people say that I sound like a Japanese college student. So in that sense, I think I sound a lot more like your average person instead of like a weather forecaster. Not that sounding like a weather forecaster is bad or anything, but you know, take your pick. So yeah, now that we're kind of coming to the end of the video, I just wanted to say that as a creator, I want to get a lot more involved with your guys' language learning too. I kind of know right now that my meat and potatoes is just making fun Omi TV videos, which I think helps a lot with input learning too. But what I mean is I want to go beyond that and really help your guys with your Japanese learning as well. So there are a few ways I want to get involved. The first being, and I know this isn't new, but I do language coaching, tutoring, whatever you want to call it. Because while I think that there are definitely general things that you should be doing when learning a language, obviously everyone's personal situation is different. People are at different stages in their Japanese learning that require different adjustments. And I think that I've gotten really good at helping people pinpoint what they need to be going after, what adjustments they need to make, and making the necessary changes to help better optimize their language learning, while also just helping explain certain things here and there that people might be stuck on, whether that be grammar or anything like that. Secondly, as of the time of launching this video, we now have a channel Discord where we can talk amongst ourselves as well to discuss optimal learning methods or just simple questions here and there. And finally, to assist with my previous statement that no subtitles is optimal, I'm now launching a Patreon where all videos will be available there as well, but with no subtitles for better pitch accent learning. And yes, while I would just like to upload them on my normal YouTube channel, the unfortunate truth is I'm pretty sure that if I do that, YouTube is just gonna bury them in the algorithm, because a lot of people will click on a video and not see any subtitles and immediately just click off. And I don't really think that's helpful for this channel's growth, so I'm making them available on Patreon. But yeah, stay tuned and I'll see you guys in the next one. See ya.